everybody, how's it going? Let's talk about your home recording studio. I am very excited about this one today, mainly, for me, but I figured maybe this will make a good opportunity for a video here. So I am going to do a pretty massive computer upgrade. So the upgrade that I'm making, I'm going from the CPU that's currently in my machine. So right now my machine is based around an AMD Ryzen 7 1700. And that was a first generation Ryzen, so that is an 8-core 16-thread CPU. I mean, that thing is, it has just been great. I can't recommend Ryzen highly enough. I know some DAWs out there also, I won't say that they're incompatible with AMD, but they just advertise that they're just compatible with Intel, like they're designed with Intel in mind. Things like Pro Tools and Cubase, mention this specifically. I don't know. I don't really use those DAWs, so it's kind of hard to say, oh yeah, you should definitely go Ryzen, because who knows? It might be kind of hindered performance or something. I just really don't know. So the upgrade that I'm making today, I'm replacing one component in this computer, and I think it's going to be a pretty massive upgrade for me. So I went from the AMD Ryzen 7 1700 to this fella right here, which is an AMD Ryzen 9 3900X. This is a 12-core, 24-thread absolute monster of a CPU. I have been looking forward to these, to getting this for a long time now. It released this past summer in 2019 and just immediately sold out, and nobody's had them in stock since. You could find them here and there. The Amazon resellers are selling them for crazy prices, $700 and $800 and $900, and I wasn't about to pay that. The retail price on this is $499 US, and I waited and waited and waited. Finally, my patience paid off. They came back to a normal price. They're in stock in Amazon, at least as of recording this right now. So I think that this, for audio, honestly, the Ryzen 7 1700, that thing is still kicking butt for me. The things that I ask it to do, I'm not a super heavy user of virtual instruments and synthesizers and all that stuff. I use some of them because, they're kind of fun to me, but I mainly work with just audio. I record through microphones, record audio tracks, and I use pretty simple effects chains of just EQ and compression and reverb and delay and things like that, so I'm not exactly stressing a machine to its max or anything. Really, it's the video editing is why I'm interested and why I ended up, spending the money on this upgrade. Well, the bad news here is that I am actually going to have to pull my computer out of the rack, which I hate doing because it is a giant pain. It is down over here. I don't think, you can't really see it very well anyways, but he's down right about here. There's all sorts of stuff plugged into the back of it. It is just not a very fun process to unplug everything, pull that giant heavy thing out of the rack, and do anything to it. But hey, this is a special occasion, so let's take a look at what I got going in there, and let's get this thing in there. Kind of cross my fingers that the backwards compatibility with my older motherboard is okay, and let's fire it up and see how it works. All right, first things first, I gotta dust this off. Like, it's making my asthma bad just looking at this, so one moment. Okay, that should help. All right, so let's crack this puppy open. I don't keep the screws on the top or anything. I guess I just gotta get started, and let's see how this turns out, all right? Wish me luck. All right, so as I'm tearing stuff down here, we'll give a quick once over to the specs in the computer as it is right now. So the CPU. I've also got 32 gigs of DDR4, 2400 memory in there. All that's sitting on a MSI, I believe it's a Gaming Pro Carbon X370 board. And there's the dogs. Hi dogs. Bye dogs. And what else? The SSDs, you can kind of see in the shot here. I've got a couple of NVMe M.2s on the board. There's a Samsung 960 Pro for my system drive, and a Samsung 970 Pro for my video drive. I've got a few hard drives in there. They're all Western Digital, 1 terabyte. There's 2 WD blacks and 1 WD blue. They're all 1 terabyte. And, you know, the little optical drive. Remember optical drives? Yeah, there's one of those in there. And you can see all the, you know, the cooling fans that are in there. So, you know, I got 2 Noctuas in the front. I got 3 now in the middle of the chassis. And I got that one lonely 80 millimeter Noctua fan in the rear as exhaust. So I guess we'll just kind of have to see how the cooling goes with this thing. Right about now is when I discovered that the new cooler mounts with different hardware than the old one. And the hardware originally came with my motherboard like 2 years ago, so I had to cut out a couple of hours of me just searching around my basement trying to find that thing. I did eventually find it, and as you can probably see right about now, you can kind of see that I only found 3 of the 4 screws to secure it. That's not a good sign. This is not going to end well. So I get the CPU laid in place there. They made it hard to kind of figure out the correct orientation, but I got it in. I got the getting the cooler installed there. It's kind of a pain. The cooler already had some thermal compound on it, so that's why I didn't apply any there. And I'm gonna get this kind of no-name power supply. I'm swapping out my 500 watt for a 650 watt. That was out of my other computer. It's modular, so I'm getting the motherboard power cable run here. The graphics card is an EVGA GeForce GTX 1080 for the win. It's a great graphics card, but I do not recommend having it inside an audio machine. It emits just a really concerning amount of electromagnetic interference whenever it's wound up and, you know, actually rendering 3D stuff. All right, get CPU power and gonna get all the cables run to the SATA drives and the optical drive. All right, about time to fire it up. So, yeah, it's the next night. Last night didn't turn out all that great, to say the least. Disaster struck. You know, remember the motherboard that was right here? You know, do you notice how it's not right here anymore? I got the new CPU plugged in. I got the system powered up and nothing. It wouldn't boot, wouldn't post, nothing. I know that I installed the BIOS update that enables compatibility with the CPU. I figured, I don't know what's going on. The easy debug indicator on the motherboard just lit up on the CPU and didn't turn off, which means CPU not found or CPU, you know, defective or whatever. So I thought, all right, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I goofed up. So I took that CPU and its cooler off, and I put my old CPU and cooler back on, fired up the system, same thing, like dead. Just all the power works, all the fans spin, GPU powers up and everything, but for some reason that motherboard won't recognize the CPU anymore. So either I was somehow careless. I mean, usually I'm really careful about these things, you know, keep myself grounded to the case. I try not to, you know, knock stuff. Maybe I scraped something with a screwdriver. Maybe I hit it with a static discharge or something. I mean, this table is kind of staticky, probably not the best work surface, but I'm usually really careful and conscientious about these things. And I tried everything. I tried everything I could and nothing. So that turned into about a 2.5 hour session of just yelling a bunch of curse words. I think I might have invented a few new curse words during the course of that whole thing. I hope that I didn't somehow turn that motherboard into a CPU killer, because I would be really bummed if I have 2 dead CPUs now, but neither CPU would work. I'm hoping that the motherboard was the problem. So today I didn't have a whole lot of choice. I went to, you know, hey, Micro Center. And I ended up getting a current gen motherboard. This is from MSI. This is an X570. This is their, what is it, the Gaming Pro, I think? Yeah, Gaming Pro Carbon. So this is kind of like their mid-range 570 board. I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna try it and keep my fingers crossed that I didn't damage the CPUs somehow. I don't know how I would have, but you never know. These are very sensitive and delicate electronics when it comes down to it. And maybe I did something dumb that I don't remember doing. All right, first things first, let's get the new motherboard out of the box. You can use the box as a little support here, but let's set this thing aside real quick while I use a credit card and some very pure rubbing alcohol to get the old thermal compound off. That cooler came with a lot of thermal compound on it. It kind of got all over everything, so take a little bit to get it all off the CPU, got it around the edges and everything, so get all that junk off there. Alright, time to actually install this thing. So I'm gonna drop it into the slot here, making sure the alignment arrows all line up so I don't put the CPU in wrong or something. Little X of thermal compound on there. And install the cooler. Got kind of an annoying mounting mechanism, but I got it done. Got the cooler plugged in. Gonna install 32 gigs of Ballistic Sport 2400 RAM. Not exactly the world's fastest RAM. Ryzen likes fast RAM, so there's a future upgrade for me. But let's get this thing into the chassis. Gonna fasten a couple of the standoff screws here just to hold it in place. And I guess, moment of truth, let's see if this thing fires up. Okay, assuming I got the power switch into the right place, I think it's the moment of truth. I'm nervous. All right, we are, there we go, set to the right way here. It's my power switch. Oh man, please work, please work. Oh no. The CPU turned on. Oh hey, all right, it worked. Woohoo! Yay! Yay! Hey! Woohoo! Yes, we have, oh, you can't see it, but we have Windows. It actually booted all the way into Windows. All right. So I guess what I need to do now is get a mouse and keyboard plugged into it, get the BIOS configured. I'm not going to go through all that here. Get the boot order set, you know, any CPU options and all that junk. All right. Oh my goodness, it's good to have a computer again. It's only been 24 hours, but it feels like it's been an eternity. All right. All right, here we are. It's about 10 days later, so I've had some time to kind of get to know the system, get it all configured. Man, it has been quite an adventure to get all my applications reinstalled and everything, because I actually had to reinstall Windows as part of this process. More on that in just one moment. But first, hey, let's take a quick look at the glory that is 12 cores, 24 threads. You know, you can see it's just idling right now. So this is undeniably the fastest machine I've ever owned. I have to say I'm really, really happy with the performance of it. Rendering and transcoding video now is more like 7.5 times real time, when I was getting about 3.5, you know, before. I've had a chance to game on it quite a bit, actually, and as a gaming CPU, it's been just stellar. It really does feed my graphics card, that 1080. It's just getting killer frame rates and you know, the few games that I've played so far. I've had a chance to do like I've done some mixing. I haven't really like tracked a project yet. Life's been pretty busy, but as far as mixing, you know, on a mix with all sorts of plugins and, you know, 30 tracks or so, just no sweat. You know, I think just at idle, it's taken up maybe like 5 or 10% of the whole CPU, so that's great. My one complaint is that the system is noisy. It's too noisy for a recording environment. Now, when I really get it wound up, when I'm doing renders and transcodes or playing games, I don't really care if it's noisy under those circumstances. If it gets hot inside that case, you know, there's plenty of fans in there. It'll keep it, you know, relatively cool. But really, actually, I think on my CPU thing here, so I have reset my temperatures. And so it's been mostly idling with a little bit of activity. And you can see that the CPU is topped out at 80 degrees. and that is with basically no activity on the computer. It's idling in the high 50s to 60. You know, that's no good either. That's too hot. That's gonna kind of cut into the longevity of the system. So I really don't know what to do. It has been on my mind a lot. This case you saw inside this server chassis I got the computer in, not a whole lot of options for like water cooling. So it's too short. The 4-unit rack case is too short to accommodate like a good air cooler. And in the past, I've tried some other aftermarket coolers, lower profile ones, and they sucked. They were pretty terrible. So with a clearance issue, still needing high performance cooling, that leaves me with like water cooling, you know, like an all-in-one water cooler. I had one on my gaming machine that I loved. The inside of that chassis just isn't set up for it. You know, the reach from the motherboard to the front of the case is too far for most AIOs. The pump cables, the tubes aren't long enough to reach the front of the case. And in the front of the case, there's no good place to mount like a 240 or a 280 rad in the front. And in the rear, there's only the two 80mm fan spots, spots for two 80mm fans. And I don't really think that a 160 radiator is gonna cool enough for this CPU. I could try mounting an all-in-one, like either a 3x120 or a 2x120 radiator in the middle of the chassis, but I don't really know how much good a radiator is going to do in the middle of a chassis where it's not necessarily drawing fresh, cool air. It's drawing warmer air from inside the chassis through the radiator. So I don't know. I've looked at case options. If you guys have, any of you enthusiasts out there or anything, know of a rack mount case that accommodates liquid cooling, let me know down in the comments below, because I have looked and looked and looked. Believe me, I have looked. And other than things like Proto Case, where you can design custom cases, that's about all I found. I hadn't really found anything that's good for that. Anyways, I just wanted to kind of, wrap this whole thing up. It's kind of a lengthy video. I'll see how much I can trim it down. Just watching me basically break a motherboard and, get a get a CPU installed. It's a long way to go for such a kind of a marginal content here. Oh, and before I go, one thing I do want to mention, I was successful eventually in getting my 3 hard drives tied together into a RAID 0 array. That was not easy, and that is why I had to reinstall Windows, because apparently if you don't have those drivers in place upon Windows installation, there's just very little chance of getting it to work after the fact. At least that's what I came to understand. So I had to reinstall Windows, and of course I had to wipe the contents of those drives in order to create a RAID array out of them. The good news, they are fast. I mean, they are getting read and write speeds of over 500 megabytes per second. So that's like, pretty solid, like SSD kind of numbers. And these are just 3, run-of-the-mill hard drives. So I'm very, very pleased with that. The bad news is that when I wiped the data off of them, I found out after the fact that my backup utility, which is the Windows file history, had not actually been backing up my music projects for the last 5 months. So I lost 5 months worth of music projects. That was kind of a gut punch. I guess the good news, I haven't been all that prolific in my music projects over the last 5 months. So there was only like a few kind of substantial projects in there that I do regret not having to revisit. But what am I going to do now? I can't create data out of thin air, so they're gone. I guess the good news is I got a home studio. I can do it again, right? It's just paying for my time, right? So I can fire up all the same instruments and do it again. Probably better this time. All right, I think this video has been long enough, so I am going to sign off here. Thanks so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And I guess I'll see you guys next time.